All right, fans, welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and this week it's a part 2. We are here with the legendary Rich Palladino here in the New England area, a staple for ring announcing, and we are happy to have you back for some more in-depth conversation.
Great to be back. I said in between, I'm very long-winded, and I mean, 32 years of doing this, I have lots of stories. So no, you're a good friend, so this has been fun. We could just do this without even recording sometimes. So
exactly. No, it's a pleasure as always. Let's kick it off with Latin Fury, Luis Ortiz, the Demon, however you may know him as far as the fans go. But what are your memories with Luis Ortiz over the years?
Ahead of his time. He could wrestle. First of all, he was trained properly by Killer Kowalski. He could wrestle. He could fly. Lovable baby face, a believable heel. And then when he ended up becoming Demon Ortiz, just made that his own. He's very, very creative. And I remember him telling me, wait till you see this gimmick I'm coming up with. And I have a picture from Chaotic of him as Demon Ortiz. I think he was still a baby face, but I'm just like, I always want to oversell the character. If I don't believe it, why should anybody in the audience not believe it? Why should anybody in the audience believe it if I don't believe it? He is one of my closest friends, no longer active. It's a beautiful family. He's a really, really he's so smart too. He's another one too, always ideas. And Louis is always one of those guys that after every match would want to know what I thought. And I always tell any wrestler that asks me to, I'm not a trained pro. I can't dissect a match. And a lot of times I did commentary for Chaotic for the first 20 years. So a lot of times too, I have so much on my brain between ring announcing, ringing the bell, commentary. So for me to remember every spot in a match was very hard for me, but I remember Louis would always want to know my honest opinion about every match. He loved it that much. I'm very happy that he got to do some high profile things and got to go to Japan. He's just a wonderful, wonderful human being that I miss dearly. I need to go see him sooner than later. He's just a really, really good friend.
And another gentleman you touched on in part 1, the extreme strongman, Gino Martino, one half of the Millennium Killers, of course. Yeah. Gorilla Martino. He's had many names over the years. Memories of Gino.
I always say you watch a lot of wrestling today, and the industry changes all the time. And I always say there's smaller guys, and then there are bigger guys. And then I always say there are guys that just look like a wrestler. Gino is one of those guys. Gino's one of those guys that if I was in a bar and I was in trouble, Gino would be the one I'd want over my shoulder.
Right.
A very, very good friend who's been to my home and, just one of the good ones. And he was basically the one, obviously, I guess when they started talking about Chaotic Wrestling and they wanted a ring announcer, he was the one that recommended me. So I always give him credit for that. And, and how many friends can I say have been in the Guinness Book of World Records or he's a legitimate strongman. Bending the steel bar over his neck. And I don't have many friends that I can say, yeah, he can drive a nail through a board with his skull. I loved working shows with Gino. He's just one of the good ones. And, it's so funny because as an announcer, I can do this until I don't want to anymore, or a promoter doesn't want me around anymore. But the wrestlers can only go as far as their body will allow them. So, these are guys that, I started or started working with in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, Tony Rumble used to use him. He was Muscles Martino for Tony. And, that's, I think, when I had first met him, and we just became really, really good friends. And, life gets in the way. I don't see, like, a lot of the guys that don't wrestle as much anymore. I don't see them as much as I should. I think we need to have like more reunion get-togethers and stuff. I see some guys, but Gino I haven't seen in a bit, but we connect on social media, and we're only a phone call away. But yeah, he's one of the good ones.
Well, the nice thing about the wrestling business, it is a brotherhood and a sisterhood. So, you can go 5 years without seeing somebody, and then you see them, and it's like you never skipped a beat.
Yeah, I think we said in the last episode, it's like when I saw Ronnie Delicious for the first time in years. We just like joined at the hip for the rest of the night, just telling old war stories. Just, very fortunate. But
So, episode 1, we spoke about your run with, of course, the CWA, with ECW, Chaotic Wrestling, and IIW. Another promotion that you've been a huge part of for many years, Beyond Wrestling, run by Drew Cordero. Tell us about your experience there and what it's been like working for Beyond over the years.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that as well. I always say Chaotic will always be my home promotion, just because I feel like, I was there when they started creating it. I mean, I was literally there when we started building the school or opening the school. Beyond, I've been with since 2013. I got myself booked for the very first American Rana. Beyond would do the old Beyond website was lookmanofans.com, because they Denver, Colorado, the man, not the place, Drew, started this in Ohio in a garage in a warehouse, and they would put on shows and stream them on YouTube and whatnot. That's the lookmanofans.com. And I remember they would run tapings at what's now the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, the home of Chaotic Wrestling in North Andover. And I was like, well, what is that? I didn't know there was a show at the school, and it was always like closed set, and they would just, no fans. When the first American Rana was advertised, Biff Busick was on it.
Oh yeah.
And that's another one of my really close friends in the business. And I said, what's this wrestling at Fete Music, Fete? I didn't know what the hell that was. He's like, oh, the Beyond, like the tapings we do at the school, doing a big show. I said, well, I want to be on it, because one of my favorites was on the poster was Colt Cabana, who I'm very fortunate to call a friend to this day. And he goes, well, let me call Drew. And he goes, yep, he'll use you, but he can only pay you this, which was below my asking rate. I said, that's fine. And Drew and I will still laugh about it to this day, but I went in and did the first American Rana, and it was just such a different vibe, because I've been around New England so long, where Beyond back in those days was, and even to this day, doesn't use just New England talent. So there were so many indie darlings like a Drew Gulak. I shouldn't even use the word darling, but great independent wrestlers that I had never worked with before, that I got to that night. I hate to say it, Jaka, the Savage Jaka, who we just lost, unfortunately. It's the first time I had met him. He actually wrestled Colt Cabana that night. Beyond's always, I never thought I'd work for an independent company that would run weekly shows, let alone right now we're doing 2 a week, Mondays in Cranston, Thursdays in Worcester. Beyond's a really cool place, and again, for me, it all comes back to friendships, and I've made some really, really, really good friends over the years. And Beyond's unique; it's different, and I think that's good for wrestling, because you can't have the same thing everywhere. Or you get back to the Randy Miller thing I talked about in episode 1.
Right.
But Beyond is definitely one of my favorite places to work, and I'm proud to have been there for over 12 years. And you never know what you're going to get. And, we just did a whole tournament just around technical wrestling, with guys like one of my favorites right now, the new IWTV champion, Fancy Ryan Clancy. We had Tim Thatcher. We had Drew Gulak, Darian Bengston from Action Wrestling. and Joseph Alexander. It was just, you're always going to get something a little bit different. And lo and behold, I will never have plans on New Year's Eve as long as Beyond is still running, because we always have Heavy Lies the Crown on New Year's Eve. And we always like to start the main event at midnight with like a countdown and everything, so that the bell rings and the very first match of the new year is the main event of our New Year's Eve show.
Yeah.
But yeah, great place to work, and a lot of new friends and fans that I've been able to meet over the years. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
So you mentioned early on episode 1, you were a big part of the CWA, obviously, and that was kind of part of your introduction into the wrestling world. But, rewinding previous to Beyond Wrestling, many years prior, you were the ring announcer for the NWA New England. Now, this is obviously after the fact, after CWA. Jason Rumble kind of carried the torch there for a while and was at the helm. What are your memories of the NWA New England and working there?
I remember when Tony Rumble had joined the NWA. Tony passed away in '99. I want to say in like '97-ish, '98, because I remember going to some of the NWA conventions. I want to say Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and having like an NWA New England match as part of an NWA card, or Knuckles Nelson and Eric Sprasia holding the NWA World Tag Team titles and traveling all over the world, literally, defending them. And at one time, I think it was Knuckles and Duke Dalton, who's another great talent from this area. It was pretty cool, because as an old school wrestling fan, to say that I worked for the NWA was something that I hold very dearly. After Tony passed, as you had said, Jason kind of carried the torch. And I was with them for a little bit after Tony had passed away. But NWA New England without Tony Rumble wasn't the same. That's no knock on Jason, because Jason, I think, is another smart, very talented former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion. I want to say on 3 different occasions, if I'm not mistaken. Very smart, gave a lot to this industry, but it was just hard to capture that lightning in a bottle that Tony had after he passed away, unfortunately. But I still wear that as like a badge of courage, because I remember actually meeting like Lou Thez at one of those NWA conventions, and I got to actually have a beer with, well, I had a beer, he had a scotch with Gordon Soley. Wow. Who was like, yeah. So, I wasn't on the show, just like I went with Pat Doyle and I believe Sheldon Goldberg back in the day, just to be there and represent. And I just remember same thing I was talking about in episode 1 of rubbing elbows with people because of my affiliation with Tony Rumble. Yeah. And to actually sit down and talk to Gordon Soley. I can't remember what year. I think that was 97 or 98, but what a thrill. Yeah. Very lucky to work for the companies that I have, and no matter what affiliation it is, as part of the National Wrestling Alliance, I hold that very proudly.
Let's go back to the Tony Rumble Memorial Dinner. I was there for that, doing some interviews with some of the friends and family, and you were hosting the ceremony. Take us back to that night. What were the emotions like on that evening?
Everybody was still, I think everybody still to this day is still broken up about it, about Tony's passing, 43 years old, and everything that he had contributed, and the opportunities he had given everybody. I remember it being well attended by both workers and fans alike. And it was a lot of heartfelt commentary from all the guests, just remembering Tony. I want to say it was at a hall in Malden. But I just remember putting on a shirt and tie, and, it was a very, very emotional night. I'd love to actually see video of it. I know that there's some surfacing somewhere out there. It has to be. I know I have some pictures from it, but I remember just getting the news when Tony had passed. Jeff Katz actually had called me, and I remember literally sitting on my front step and crying, like literally, because this was the guy that gave me my big break. But that was just, like I said, a very well attended celebration. Um, I know I'm talking more about that because I just remember when Tony passed. I remember Tommy Dreamer coming up and Taz coming up for the services and everything. And um, yeah, but that night was just so full of emotion. But it was just a celebration. It was a lot of sadness, but it brought us all together. Tony brought us all together. Unfortunately, under horrible circumstances with him passing, but um, I remember being nervous too because it's kind of an honor to be asked to host something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a special night. But I had just celebrated my wrestling anniversary is October 23rd, and I had said it in my social media post. There's not a day where I don't think about that man. In all honesty, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for his vision. You know, I might have been able to work my way in one way or another, but I don't think at the level that I did because of those that he knew and how he knew how to produce quality wrestling shows and TV wrestling and all that. So yeah, it was a
And I
great
think
night.
it's very important to tell these stories and to
Yeah,
talk about these people because these people were very important over the years. And just because you're not aware of who they are, if you're a wrestling fan today, I think it's good to know the history and good to know who did big things along the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was special. Miss him dearly.
So ring announcing all these years, you've seen so many different talents over the years. Was there ever an instance where somebody had, in your opinion, all the potential in the world? You thought that they were going to go, right to TV, and for whatever reason, just didn't work out for that person. They
Logan
never.
brothers,
Okay, yeah,
Matt and Brian Logan. Um, I think, like I said, with Louis Ortiz ahead of his time, I just think that they they were smart. They did get out of New England and were doing like ECWA regularly for the great Jim Kettner. Back in the day, but I always felt like they were just polished, solid. I still say to this day, Matt Logan has probably the best drop kick I've ever seen, with the exception of course, Jim Brunzell. And now I always say Fancy Ryan Clancy has an amazing drop kick these days too. Um, I just, those are the first names that always pop out in my brain. Um, Others I think of are, and he did a lot, is, John Walters. Um, but, he did Ring of Honor. He's wrestled overseas. He's wrestled in Japan. He did Lucha Libre USA. Um, he did a lot, but I think he would have been, I think he should have, done a little bit more. And, I'm kind of partial to the Chase that runs the place, Chase Del Monte, I think too. He and the Logans, kind of like a package deal, those Mill City Hooligans. Um, but those are some of them, and I'd probably loop Luis Ortiz in there too. You know, yeah. Those are the first ones that come to mind. I always start with the Logans though, because I've been asked that before. I just think that they, you know, I always think of like the Major brothers. Like I was always like, what if it was Matt and Brian Logan?
yeah,
And I love Brian Myers and Matt Cardona and consider them friends. But I remember seeing the Major brothers. I'm like, well, okay, the Logan brothers got to be not too far behind.
right.
Obviously, and they're real brothers as opposed to Myers and Cardona. But yeah, those are some of them. Yeah, I'm probably leaving a ton off the list too. But yeah,
So you mentioned in episode one, Milo Masterson. You kind of touched on him a little bit.
Mhm.
Obviously, a part of chaotic wrestling behind the scenes, and of course, as a commentator, Milo Masterson. So, what was he like? What was he like behind the scenes?
he was. It was so funny because when we did commentary together for years, he would always. I would always reference old wrestling, and he would always like, you would think it was like a goof, like he didn't know what I was he really didn't know like a lot about old wrestling.
Yeah,
It was kind of funny, and he was just he a really good guy. We're still in a fantasy football league together to this day. He's destroying me actually this year. um But he was just a really good guy. And I mean, if for somebody that hadn't done commentary regularly, that was a great first partner to have,
Yeah.
because I'm always like the straight guy and, in favor of the good guys and whatever. And he and I just had like a natural chemistry, not the my most natural chemistry is another guy, RJ Deloise, which we could talk about another time. But Milo and I just clicked, and I was the one that actually came up with his name, because um, it's not his real name, but everybody called him Milo, and we decided he needed a last name. In the early days of Chaotic, he was infatuated with Master Sandy, who was Ronnie, the One Night Stand's manager, but also a tough wrestler too. And we need a last name, and I came Milo Masterson. I was like Master Sandy, Masterson. So because it used to be I'm Rich Palladino and this is Milo, and I'm like, gotta have a last name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great, and just a genuinely funny guy. Like you would think he was a comedian on the side.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a really, really fun guy to work with. I really loved working with him. He was a blast.
So when it comes to ring announcing, just walk us briefly through a full day for you. Call time for you when you show up at a venue, and what your job is looking like. Hours before you're in the ring doing your thing.
I spend a good 45 to 60 minutes every show writing up my index cards.
Okay.
I try not to look at them. It just depends how familiar I am with the talent that I'm announcing. But everything starts with a 45 to 60 minutes of writing up index cards. I have a database of every wrestler I've announced, so I don't have to bother a wrestler for their information when I'm at a show. Call time, I will say, for Wrestling Open, I am very guilty of not making call time because it amazes me when people are shocked. Some people, when they ask me, or when I mention that I have a real full-time job, some people are, you don't just do this. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not making a living as an independent wrestling ring announcer. I do fine, but it's side hustle. But like on a Saturday show, if it's a 7:00 show, I'm usually at the building by 4:30, 5:00. There's always production meetings and specific things I need to know. And especially if we're streaming live on IWTV, which I highly recommend for any independent wrestling fan. Yeah, but that's a typical day. It's the prep work at home before I leave. I always want to have everything buttoned up before I even hit the road. Then it's the travel time. I get my hair cut at one place. I'll give a shout out to Hair by Nicole in Burlington, Mass. She's been cutting my hair for like over 30 years. So when I have a Chaotic show in that area, I always make sure I get my hair cut before the show. But then I'm there, usually a good at least 2.5 hours before. And, like I said, there's production and things I need to know. And it also depends what I'm doing too. Cause sometimes, there are shows where I'm still doing some commentary and ring announcing and post-match interviews and, all that stuff. But that's a typical thing. And then it's usually drive home and get some sleep and off to the next town the next day. I'm a weekend warrior, but my wife's very understanding. So she puts up with me. But, she knows I'm doing what I love. So that's a typical routine. Maybe get something to eat after. Especially when Walters is home, it's all about getting treats. That's what they're called, treats after the show. But yeah, so that's usually the routine.
Any personal stories working with New Jack over the years, the late New Jack?
Yeah, very, very intimidating person to be around. Not too long before he passed, I actually got tasked with picking him up. I was doing something. I was doing like a live auction thing for Caleb Seltzer. I was auctioning off a bunch of collectibles. This was coming out of COVID. And then Steve Perkins had New Jack for a virtual signing. So this is kind of coming out of the whole COVID thing. And New Jack, I remember driving from Boston to Fitchburg, Massachusetts for this virtual signing. Little conversation here and there, but not a lot. We weren't like best of friends, but I've been out like to dinner and bars and stuff with New Jack. He was just a genuinely funny. If as long as you were in his inner circle, you were fine. But yeah, just a real funny, unique character. There are some stories from backstage that I can't even talk about. But just he was New Jack was New Jack, and it
Yeah.
was New Jack's rules all the time. But like I said, very intimidating. But fortunately, I shared a locker room with him many times. I was very saddened to hear of his passing, especially where I just had that car ride and the virtual signing with him not too long before he passed. And you know, very unique individual.
Yeah. I'd like to touch base on the late Michael James, wrestled as Mr. Biggs. Bigger
Mm.
is better. Of course, he was the Golden Buddha as well for a time period there. And, he was the promoter behind the IWA, which would often run out of St. John's Gym in Clinton, Mass., former location for IWF.
Mhm.
And he would also run the WCWA years after that. What are your memories of Mr. Biggs and, any experiences you've had working with him?
I remember just him always being, for a big guy, a solid worker in the ring. The Golden Buddha was one of my favorite things. We did that in chaotic wrestling. Um, I also remember him just being a jack of all trades. I remember shows where he and his wife, or I can't remember if that was his wife or his girlfriend, if they needed somebody at the table taking tickets, if he wasn't booked on the show, always be helping out. Big guy, but an even bigger heart. Just a real genuine, nice guy. Always smiling, always happy to be in, whatever show it was, whether it was IAW or as the Golden Buddha, which I thought was fantastic. Was just seeing that big round face with a mask on it, and his neck would be sticking out underneath,
Right.
and he would just say hi, and just little things like that just always made me laugh, made me smile. It's a shame it's been a while since
Yeah.
Mike passed away. But like I was saying, I think in episode 1, or maybe it was this episode, a wrestler that looked like a wrestler. How could you not? 400 pounds. He was just a big guy, but still, knew his role and played it well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike was a good guy, and friends with him over the years. And, he was the ring crew often. He had the ring and would bring it to the different shows. And so that's how I would get to some of the shows early on. I would travel with Mike and Chris Biggs. And when he became the Golden Buddha, I was his manager. At the beginning, I was Wailu Bamboo.
Of
And
course.
I too had the mask, and I think we came up with the gimmick in studio for Dave Fournier. He was doing a talk show,
Oh, yeah.
and Mr. Biggs was a guest, and Gino Martino was a guest.
Okay.
And then we all kind of put our heads together and came up with Wailu Bamboo. But I had a blast doing that. It wasn't, maybe 2-3 matches. I think it
Yeah.
lasted.
Sure.
And but just a good memory in the wrestling world.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Good
You
guy.
mentioned conventions as well. You've been a part of several conventions now. You've traveled for some to do interviews. Why don't you tell us about your experiences at some of the conventions or fan fests or meet and greets over the years, whether it be from an announcing capacity, interviewing, or even just attending as a fan early on or whenever. Just tell us about your experiences on the road doing that.
Yeah. I remember the very first convention that I think I actually went to was during a WrestleMania in New Jersey. I had actually gone to WrestleMania, whatever one it was, with Cena, Rock, Taker, Punk. I think it was 29
Yes.
in New Jersey. I went with my family, and I'd never been to a WrestleCon. And I went to one specifically because, like I said, I'm a big fan of Colt Cabana's before I started with Beyond. And Colt Cabana would do the $5 wrestling, where they would play like some really bad independent wrestling, and they would just who's the other guy? Marty DeRosa would do commentary over it. And I remember going to that, and I remember Beyond Wrestling had a table set up at that WrestleCon, and that was the first time I met Drew Cordero. This is before it was a few months later, I actually ended up working for them. I remember having beer with Hornswoggle. the very first time. But in later years, Beyond would do a show like usually like how WrestleMania schedules are round the clock.
Yeah.
We would get like the midnight time slot and do a show. I know we did one in Orlando, we did one in New Orleans, and I would go just for the experience of being a part of it. I got off the plane in Orlando. Caleb Seltzer calls me. He's like, "Where are you right now?" I said, "Somebody picked me up at the airport and is taking me to the hotel." He goes, "Can you do interviews at WrestleCon?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm wearing like a baseball hat and a t-shirt." I'm like, he goes, "Doesn't matter." And it was for title match wrestling. And that was in Orlando. It must have been 17. And Caleb was running the camera, and they literally just gave me a microphone. I would go table to table. And if anybody wanted to do an interview, and luckily I knew enough people. And there were some people like, "Nah, I'm all set." And then there were some like, "Yeah." And I remember one of the first people I talked to was Mike Bennett and Maria, and they knew me from Indies and whatever up here. But I did an interview with Aaron Stevens, who was another old friend from way back in the Tony Rumble days. And Aaron at that time he was with Impact, TNA, and it wasn't public, but he had not re-signed with TNA. And I did this interview with him. And he said during this interview, I'm not re-signing with TNA. I'm not sure where I'm going next, blah, blah, blah. And after we were done, he goes, "Hey, you're my friend." He goes, "I haven't told anybody. Do whatever you want with that." And the title match guys immediately put the interview out there. And it got picked up by like Yahoo Sports, Sports Illustrated, all these other outlets picked it up because back then it was big news if somebody wasn't re-signing with one of the big top companies.
Sure.
And I remember it got like 25,000 views. Like, I don't know if that makes me viral or something. I certainly haven't seen any money for it, but it was just a really cool experience that here I am. And a lot of times too, it's like some of them are my friends and some of them are people that I don't know from a hole in the wall. Episode 1, we talked about me wanting to be the ring announcer. I've become good friends with Gary Michael Capetta over the years. I did an interview with Gary Michael Capetta. I did an interview with Justin Roberts, I think at that same WrestleCon. So it's just a really cool experience. And I did that in Orlando and New Orleans. However, there was some kind of, I know nothing technology, as you know, from helping me get set up on this thing here. There was some problem with the microphone. There was some wire or something that was loose. And there were some interviews that we did in New Orleans that never saw the light of day. But there were some that I did do, and it was like Rock and Roll Express right after they got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And I remember interviewing Ricky Morton. He goes, "I'm sorry, what's that?" And he's like wiping his eye so you could see his big ring and stuff like that. And then Bill Apter comes in and literally like walks right in on the interview and starts doing like a Jerry Lewis impression. The kid in me is just like blown away, that. And of course, the New England Fan Fest, which I've been blessed to work with you on over the years. It's always a fun experience to me because I'm not in this industry if I'm not a fan first.
Right.
So I know in years past, I've got to interview some amazing people. Vicky Guerrero. I did a great interview with Vicky Guerrero. Tommy Rich, all these guys and girls that are just legends in this industry.
Yeah.
And even the last Fan Fest that I worked for you, Abdullah the Butcher was there.
Yeah.
And I got a picture of he was like, "Here, take the fork." And, I'm jabbing him with the fork or choking him and stuff. And they're always just fun. I love, love, love conventions. Your last convention I couldn't do. I was somewhere out of town. It broke my heart. Yeah. Even if I'm not working, I like just going to them and seeing my friends. Sure. It just makes me happy. And, but one of my favorite things, and I'm not pandering because it's your show here, but the New England Hall of Fame, hosting that thing is one of the most fun experiences ever because, I'm getting to pay homage to my friends that have paid their dues locally, and then some of the biggest stars in the world. And it's just, I'm very fortunate.
I was going to touch base on that. You got to share the stage with Howard Finkel, the late
Mm.
great Howard Finkel. When it comes to announcing, it doesn't really get any better than Howard
No,
Finkel. You know what I mean?
no, he's the goat.
He's at the top. So, what was it like working directly with Howard Finkel in a co-host position with him, and just sharing the stage with the Fink, during the ceremony?
Surreal. I remember meeting him over the years because obviously I had sent stuff in trying to get hired, and I had a tryout WWE in 2003, didn't pan out. Um, but he and I became friends over the years, and I always remember like we would get like the script of who was inducting who, and I think there was one where it said Howard brings Rich Palladino to the stage. No, we end up switching that. I bring Howard Finkel to the stage. That was just amazing. Like the kid in me. It's just like like when Shawn Michaels won the title, the boyhood dream comes true. Working with Howard Finkel was just surreal, and I would always handle the local talent. He would handle the bigger names, but just having that camaraderie and that interaction, which led to years of friendship. Where I remember taking my son when he was very small. I remember when Howard was signing at the Super Mega Fest, the thing in Framingham.
Yeah,
Um, and I remember bringing my son when he was really small. And, all these names like a Howard Finkel have like somebody that's there handling the money and the transactions.
sure.
And I remember going up to the table and Howard telling his guy, "This is Rich Palladino. He's a member of the fraternity. He doesn't pay for anything." And I have his action figure signed over there on my wall. And he signed a picture from my son. And, it was a career highlight to be able to work with him.
Yeah,
And then to learn of him being sick and then passing was just devastating. I know you were very, very, very close with him. I was fortunate enough. Again, I here I go rambling again. I was in Orlando on a business trip for my real job, and it lined up with an NXT taping. And somebody in WWE had, I said, "Hey, I'm going to be, can I," it was when they did it at Full Sail.
yeah.
And it was right before WrestleMania. So they had all these like marquee matches, and Fink was there to ring announce. I want to say it was Randy Orton against Damian Sandow.
Okay.
Anyways, they brought me in the back. I'm in the locker room area. And I walked by a room, and Howard was just sitting there by himself, like going over some notes. And I just gently knocked on the door, and he just go, "Rich." And he got up and he came over and he gave me a hug. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm here for my real job." I said, "I just wanted to come to an NXT show." He's like, "Welcome, let's connect." And we talked a little bit after the show. Just that's the guy Howard was. So to be able to work with him was amazing. And after he had passed, I remember you had told me that I was going to share the stage with Mean Gene.
All right.
And
Right.
before we got to that one, Mean Gene passed away.
Yeah.
So, Howard was always number one, but I got to interact with Mean Gene at some of your events in the past, cherished memories. But it was just, I was so sad when he passed away because I knew we had that coming up like that summer. I think he
Yeah.
passed away in January, right after the first of the year, if I remember.
Yep.
And I was devastated. But yeah, Howard was just the best ringing up, the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
Ever. I don't care who they are.
Without a doubt. I'll tell you a quick story and how that transpired. 2010, I went to, I believe it was Pompton Plains, New Jersey, for the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, who at the time were still based out of Amsterdam, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing a benefit dinner for Chief Jay Strongbow in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And Chief was there. He was a guest of honor. And Billy Caputo, former referee, Ray Apollo as Doink, Johnny Rods was there. The Savaldi family was there.
Mm-hmm.
Really special event. It was just really cool. Pretty Boy Larry Sharp was a part of it.
Wow.
Dawn Marie and Howard Finkel. He was the MC of this ceremony. And honestly, that was one of the big parts that I wanted to make the trek, down there.
Yeah.
So I get there, and Howard's the first one to greet us. He's kind of standing on his own, and it's my buddy and I. My buddy's from Massachusetts. I'm from Rhode Island, obviously. And Howard's like, "Oh, where are you guys traveling from?" And my buddy Steve's like, "Well, Massachusetts." And I'm like, "Rhode Island." And he goes, I mean, it kind of blew my mind. And he just goes, "Oh, well, you must be very familiar with the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame." And when he said that, I
Yeah,
was just, I couldn't even respond. Steve had to kind of speak up for me and was like, "This is a guy who runs the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame."
that's amazing.
And yeah, that was a surreal moment for me.
Yeah,
And we got talking, and we hit it off great. And Howard's like, you mind if I join you for dinner? So every time he would do the introductions at the podium, he'd come back down. He would sit next to me at the table there, and that whole experience was just unbelievable. And
yeah.
come by the end of the night, he was kind of offering his services. He's like, I would absolutely love to host the New England ceremony if you'd have me. And I never thought that would be an option. Obviously,
Yeah,
the greatest of all time. And of course, yeah, I'll have you, so
of course.
if he
Yeah.
only knew at that time, how much I looked up to him over the years.
Yeah,
So
never lose sight of the fact of how much he appreciated being a part of it and how much he respected that, because I know I sent you a picture that Tommy Dreamer had taken at the home or the hospital before Howard had passed,
yeah,
and in the background was that plaque with his name on it from when
right.
he was inducted. And I remember looking at it and going, "Oh, that looks familiar," and zoom in on the picture, and I'm like, "Look at that." It was just literally like on a shelf,
Yeah,
like literally behind where Dreamer and Howard had taken that picture, and he
yeah.
had that prominently, like right there on.
It's
It's
unbelievable. Yeah, to
yeah,
even, he was he had such an appreciation for the business, and he was a fan first and foremost.
yeah,
And he's a historian. He knew it all. He's a walking encyclopedia. If you needed some outthink the think, I mean, that became
yeah,
a thing. And
yeah.
yeah, Howard. The one regret I had was I was going to visit Howard when he was in that facility, and I put it off because I was going to be making a trip out to New York or New Jersey anyway a few months later. And I said, well, I'll just hit it on the way back. And unfortunately, he had passed away. And I'll always regret that. I mean, it's just something you can't,
Yeah,
it was out of my control. I mean, you
of
can't
course.
dwell on it, of course. But,
Yeah,
Howard was important in my role with everything I've done. New England Fan Fest, New England Hall of Fame. He's such a big part of it every year. And yeah, it was just an honor to have him, and call him my friend. So
I remember you talk about like a big fight feel or you knew your events are legit when you've got Howard Finkel there.
right,
Not only hosting the like a Hall of Fame ceremony, which I know you don't do every year, but I remember being at the big convention center. It was like, I don't know, the Parade of Stars or whatever, and he was down towards the back and introducing every wrestler
yeah,
that was going to be like all the big names that were there.
yeah,
That was just surreal. But yeah, I mean, but think about the opportunities that you got to spend time with him and to
right,
establish a friendship like that. You
sure,
know, people would kill to have that kind of an opportunity.
yeah,
It's a legend,
without
absolute
a
legend.
doubt. Just going over, we're going to throw three names at you.
All right.
They're New England, started in New England, went on to bigger and better things. Early memories of Kofi Kingston, Mercedes Monet, and Ivar, who are all doing big things.
So Kofi came in green as grass, but very athletic. And I remember he was Kofi Nahaje Kingston. He was supposed to be like this Jamaican prince from Kingston, Jamaica. And, you know, what people don't realize is he wasn't, I think he had maybe 8, maybe 9 matches. We have a DVD that we had produced. That's how long ago it was, of all of his matches in Chaotic. Um, he was brand new to the business, but he caught on quickly. He was a Chaotic original, and talent scouts from WWE popped into the school, and they saw Kofi and said, "You know what? This kid's an athlete. We can turn him into something." And sure enough, they did. Nice kid. One of the very first time I took my son to a WWE event at the Worcester Centrum, um, uh, Kofi, I I texted him and told him where I was sitting. And he goes, all right, I'm going to find you. Because it was kind of like on the boards at the Centrum, right by the entranceway. And he spotted me, and I'm holding my son, who's now almost 20 years old, but I'm holding him at the time. And he came over, rubbed my son's head, and goes, welcome to your first show. And my son was just, one of your weekends, remember you had a weekend thing at the in Warwick, and they had a house show in Providence.
Right.
He had got me tickets that night for me and my family. And, everything okay? How are the tickets? Did you guys have fun? And then he's just that kind of guy. Yeah. Never forgot, the little people like me from back in the day. Yeah. I was probably the first one ever to introduce him in a show. On a show, I should say. But he wasn't here for long. Oh, and after that Centrum show, literally called him. He picked up the phone and spoke to my son on the phone.
Oh,
wow. Just like on the Bluetooth driving home from Worcester. Because we were going to try and see him after, but he was actually traveling with Cody, who was doing the Stardust thing at the time. Yep. And they were heading off to the next town or something, but I called him and he actually spoke to my son. Did you have fun? Did you like my match? That kind of stuff. How else do you get opportunities like that? Right. So that's my memories of Kofi, and he's just done such great things. Oh, and then when he was world champion, he was in town and made time for me. I'm like, how many times am I going to say I have a friend that's the champion of the world?
Yeah.
And, told me to come by the hotel and got a picture together with the belt. It's just that's Kofi. Yeah. Mercedes, aka Sasha Banks, that was number 2. Mercedes, everybody's gonna say, "Oh, I knew she had it when she first started." She started training. She did a fantasy camp at the Chaotic School, and I guess whoever does best at the fantasy camp wins free training or for I don't know a year or 6 months, whatever. She outshined every other person that's signed up for that fantasy camp. She was another one. She was on shows, but she was on shows fast. I mean, her first assignment, right hand to God, was Jamie J. Mikowski comes over to me and goes, Rich, this is Mercedes. Mercedes is Rich. Rich, she's all yours. She's here to help you at the table. Because that was when I did commentary, ring announcing, and the bell. Her first assignment was ringing the bell and keeping the time and stuff, sitting at the table with me. Maybe we did that for 2 shows, and then she was already in the ring and off to bigger and better. Fast forward a couple of years, she's in NXT. I'm on a business trip in Pittsburgh. They're doing a show at the AE Theater in Pittsburgh. I happen to be in town. I go to the show. Who makes time for me? Mercedes. And I got we got a picture together. Me, her, and Sean Bennett, who used to come up here from New Jersey and ref for Chaotic. So happy to see everything she's doing right now. And I don't know how many more belts she wants, but, I guess 11 or 12 is not enough.
Right.
And then the other one, Ivar, is just another one who I remember when we would do Chaotic shows in Woburn. I grew up in Reading, Massachusetts, and my mom would come to maybe a half a show because it was right up the street from her house. When we were in Woburn, her house was like a mile up the road in Reading, which is the next town over.
Okay.
And there were a couple of shows she came to, and she sat with Ivar's dad, I guess the Grandpa Beard, or back when he was Warbeard Hansen, his dad and my mom would sit together at the shows and just, oh, that's my son, the ring announcer. That's my son, the guy with the big beard. Todd's another one. He just appeared at the Chaotic 25th anniversary show. Wrestled Mortar. I wasn't there, as I said in episode 1. Unfortunately, I was out of town, unfortunately, which killed me. But he's another one that I can just shoot a random text to on a Saturday afternoon or whatever, and he'll get back to me, that kind of guy. I've seen every incarnation of his thing, from Handsome Johnny to, the brand new bad Todd Hansen, to Warbeard Hansen, to, him, separating his shoulder against Brandon Locke, comes back, grows a beard, and just reinvented himself. I mean, he has paid the ultimate price and had so many injuries, but former world tag team champion and still going strong, and one of the best big men this business has ever seen. The way he flies, amazing. And I think it was actually an interview with Chris Van Vliet. He's actually training, like teaching some of the bigger guys how to wrestle like a big guy at the PC right now. So he's a guy that when his body's all done, I guarantee you he's probably going to continue on training and teaching, and just wonderful human being too.
Bringing on that next generation.
Yeah.
Now, a couple ring announcers, or a few ring announcers from the New England area over the years. If you have an anecdote about any of them, Mel Simons, Ron Lemieux, and Frank Krasnowski.
So Mel Simons, ironically enough, used to play in a band with my dad.
Wow.
When I was a kid really into wrestling, my dad would say, a friend of mine I used to play in the bands with does the ring announcing, for Killer Kowalski or something. And Mel is the original voice of New England, and for so many years working for Kowalski. Mel has his own style. His style is much different than mine. But Mel was like just the ultimate showman, and always willing to like take a bump for a worker, which I don't do. Great guy. I'll see him at the reunions or the conventions. Still the biggest fan of this business, and always such a pleasure to talk with. I love Mel. I love him to death. Sorry, I keep sipping water.
No, that's fine.
Number 2 was Ron Lemieux. I met him when I was working for Sheldon Goldberg's NECW. Ron was actually, I thought I was going to be ring announcing, and Ron ended up ring announcing, and I would host the shows. I did some ring announcing for NECW, but Ron, when he was living in Florida, used to ring announce the ECW shows down in Florida the way I did the ECW shows here in New England.
Yep.
Great guy. I haven't seen or talked to him in years, but I always enjoyed working with him because, like I said, I thought I was going to be the ring announcer, and then it was Ron, but I was still a part of the show, which is fine. And I think he felt bad, like, because we would always just sit there, but we ended up becoming good friends, and as long as I'm a part of it, I don't care. It was cool. I always liked Ron. I think he does a great job, and like I said, we had that ECW connection back in the day. And then Frank Krasnowski, my God, I used to go to the Boston Garden shows every month. I actually had a friend of mine that I went to high school with. His dad worked with somebody that worked at Nesson, or he knew somebody that worked at Nesson. And we'd always get like the seats, like usually like on the aisle where they came out and stuff, like comp seats back in the day. I remember seeing Frank every month at the Boston Garden. I told them when I got to finally meet him at one of your events. He did so much. I mean, he did everything, throughout the area. He had my dream job when I was a kid. And that was, I was always a Howard Finkel guy, but when I'd go to Boston, I'd be like, I don't know who this guy is, but my God, I want that job someday. And fond memories, and got to share those memories with him. And that was a real thrill. Excellent ring announcer. And I always enjoyed Frank, and always good to see him.
And another one you've been a big part of throughout the New England area, Limitless Wrestling. Some of your particular memories from that promotion.
Yeah, Randy Carver, who runs it, he's just a kid. He's in his 20s. But, no disrespect to any other company in Maine, but Limitless is by far the finest, most attended wrestling company I've ever seen in Maine. Limitless started, Randy was doing the ring announcing himself. And then he came down with like pneumonia. It was like literally like, what's it going to take to get you to come up and do a show in Orono, Maine? I was like, oh God, I don't like long drives. And ironically enough, now my son goes to college at UMaine, Orono. So I remember I drove up with Brian Fury, TC, Tanya, and Zack Sabre Jr., who had actually come to the Chaotic. He was on the show. He wrestled Chris Hero, my first Limitless show, like 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And Sabre had come to the school to work with some of the kids at the Chaotic school. And the four of us drove up together, middle of the winter, whatever. And it was at a very small hall that maybe had, I don't know, 150 people in it. Great show. Awesome. But now to fast forward that to almost 10 years later, this past August, and have like 2,000 people at the Coliseum in Lewiston for the Hardys against my boys, Ricky Smokes and Brad Baylor, Swipe Right. To see how that company has grown, it's absolutely amazing. Randy is, after all these years, I like to feel like I'm a part of something. Like that guy shows me so much appreciation. I'll get random texts from him, just like, thanking me for being a part of his thing. And he just genuinely seems to appreciate having me be part of the show. And sometimes I get in my own head and he's like, never underestimate how important you are to this industry, my company, whatever. Very proud of him. I love working for him. Really, really good, just genuine guy. And like I said, to see that company grow. The very first night of the very first Limitless show, I was working for Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling for Mario Mancini down in Connecticut. And I remember Brian Fury was on the first Limitless show, and I was on one of the first Paradise Alley shows. And being the cynics that we are, we're like, you got that Limitless, I got that. Well, let's text each other and see who's got the shittier house, Right. And I'm texting Fury, and I go, oh my God, there's like 500 people in this high school gym. He's like, yeah, this hall where the Limitless show is packed too. And we both sent pictures of the crowds, and both companies are still going. But I know we're talking. I never worked for Paradise. I only did a couple of spots for them, but now being a regular for Limitless, and Randy's always like, hey, I need so and so to do a radio interview. I want you to do it. That kind of stuff. Always takes good care of me. Just one of my favorite places to work. Just really, really good dude.
And who would you say is the Mount Rushmore of New England specific, New England pro wrestling? Any era.
Wow. I definitely put Alex Arion in there. I think Alex Arion, probably go back to episode 1 of one of the most, somebody that should have gone on to bigger and better. Alex Arion, I mean, if you're going to say any era, I would have to say Scott Taylor, because he's a New England original that has done a ton. Man, I wish I had more time to prep this because I'm going to piss off some of my friends. Put Rick Fuller on the list. And guys like it's hard, like Tim McNeely, Duke Dalton. I'm taking it kind of older school where, Scott Taylor broke in a little before I did. Fuller, same thing, like early 90s.
Yeah.
And then I look at, into like the mid to late 90s is when Alex Arion had started. I think Alex Arion's one of the best wrestlers ever come out of this area. I think the Mount Rushmore would have to be more than 4 guys, though. That's the thing. Because, Killer Kowalski's not a New England guy, but he trains so many guys. Do you put Killer on there? Do you put Triple H on there, But,
right.
That's a really tough one. I know I just gave like a real half-ass answer on that, but
that's
but the first one, because I remember when Mike Crockett and Brian Malonis were doing the podcast about nothing, they wanted a top 10 list, and I did like a top 10 list.
Yeah.
And I remember having Scott Taylor, Alex Arion, I want to say Ivar, whatever incarnation, Todd Hansen, whatever. I put him probably in my top 5. And I would never sell short, a guy like Brian Fury. So I've just rattled off a bunch of New England names and probably left a whole bunch of good friends off there too. But yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sorry. I bombed that one.
That's fine. It is hard, especially when you have all different eras to think about. It could
Yeah.
become difficult. Now, John Cena is on his retirement tour, 2025, hanging it up. No more in ring action after this year. So, I remember seeing John as prototype at the Wonderland Dog Tracks. Must have
Yep.
been chaotic wrestling. And I was there, and he was helping set up chairs. Very
Yeah.
humble, because even at that point, prototype was a known, known gimmick, and came from UPW, of course, and
Yeah.
was doing big things already. And see him on that level, setting up the chairs and really taking the time, and he really hasn't changed. He's a very humble guy. So, what is your take on the career that has been left now behind by John? And who do you think the next John Cena will be? Is there somebody within the company
Mm.
now that you think will boost up to that next level?
I'm more focused on who's going to be John Cena's last opponent, but I'm, I mean, I'm no genius when I say that. I just think Braun Breaker is going to be like that next like big thing. I don't think they've had a John Cena consistently in years, and now I think Shawn Michaels and that crew down in NXT just does an amazing job. You watch some of those takeovers from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and you
Yeah.
see where all those guys and girls are now. Um, I'd love to say Braun Breaker, and because plus he's second generation too, so he gets it. But my thoughts on John Cena though is the prototype thing where he wrestled Jimmy Jack Cash at Wonderland.
Yeah.
Right when he started with WWE, he came to a chaotic show, sat in the back row with a baseball hat on, and not everybody knew who he was. And he came to a chaotic wrestling show in Methuen because me and his dad were doing the commentary. Johnny Fabulous,
Yep.
Mr. Cena Sr. And fast forward to my tryout with WWE in 2003, I saw John Cena, and he knew who I was and shook my hand and said, "Keep an eye on Fabo for me, will you?" Johnny Fabulous, of
Yep.
course. And then when he came in and did that referee spot for well, it was a chaotic show, but it was also Johnny. It was Fabulous Productions presents, and it was a fundraiser in Byfield, Mass, and he was the guest ref, and Vince showed up and all that stuff. Um, Cena's just, I just think, like for a guy from here, obviously an athlete, played football at Springfield College, really learned everything, like you said, out at UPW out in California, to what the magic that he and Randy Orton and Shelton Benjamin and Brock Lesnar created in OVW to the megastar that he is now. I just think, and like you said, humble, you know, I just think he's a role model. I think for anybody, and a blueprint for anybody that wants to learn how to pay your dues, like you said, setting up chairs. Even when he was in developmental under UPW or whatever, doing the prototype gimmick to the way he just treats people and make a wish and all that stuff. Um, yeah, very sad to see him hanging it up, but makes sense, and couldn't be happier to have met him the few times that I have and work with his dad as often as I do, and
Yeah.
just a real asset. But I guess if I'm going to pick the next guy, talk to me in 3 or 4 or 5 years, and let's see where Braun Breaker is.
Yeah.
I just think that's the guy, in my
In
opinion.
2008, we rewind a little bit to the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's the inaugural class. At that point, it was still in its infancy, obviously. So it was, part of a show, in the middle of a show, and obviously, eventually, the following year, it turned into its own event. Any memories from that evening? Obviously, you were an inductee in that inaugural class, and you also posthumously inducted the Boston Bad Boy Tony Rumble.
Yeah, I was going to say there's like three things that stick out. Was inducting Tony meant the world to me. I remember it was right when Killer Kowalski was ill, and I think I had mentioned something during the show about keep Walter in your prayers. And the third thing that I remember most was I got inducted in the same year as one of my best friends, Jose Perez. So that made that night like super special for me. My only regret is that it became the bigger thing that it was, a year after. But I still like I said in episode 1, that plaque where my finger is right now, that's on, like, literally when I work my real job, like my boss tells people, do you know Rich is in 3 Hall of Fames, whatever. I have those prominently displayed there. I remember getting the call from you and I was just like so humbled. Like, to me, it's just like, I'm a fan I'm just living my dream. Like that's the biggest thing. I'm gonna tap out at like 155 different times I get to do this year. That's more than anybody in WWE, TNA, AEW. I'm probably the most worked ring announcer, but I'm getting older too. I get very tired now. I ain't going anywhere yet because I always joke with young ring announcers, they're just waiting for me to die so they can take all my bookings. But
Right.
yeah, but when you ask about my memories, like I remember getting that call, being completely humbled and thrilled and honored to be a part of it. And then to fast forward years down the road and end up being a part of the ceremony itself.
Yeah.
So that's just, it's awesome. And never lose sight of the fact that you created something that a guy like Howard Finkel acknowledged. Have you
Yeah.
guys heard of the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame? Yeah, he's the guy that did it. Yeah, it's great because a lot of people don't get the recognition that they should.
Yeah.
To say that I had 3 people that acknowledged my years of what I've done is very, very special. I mean, something I take very, very seriously. So, yeah, that's what I remember. Inducting Tony, right when Kowalski was very sick, and being inducted the same year as Jose was pretty cool.
Well,
So,
it was well deserved. You can't have a New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame without the voice of New England, Rich Palladino. That's for
yes,
sure.
sir. Thank you.
So briefly, the territories, obviously, USWA, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They had working relationships with WWF at the time, mid '90s. And now, fast forward all these years, we're kind of seeing it again for the first time in quite a while. With Evolve, with AAA, with TNA now, with the new relationship with them. What's your take on that? Kind of working together with other promotions now that leadership has kind of shifted. Maybe we wouldn't have seen that if it stayed the same.
Yeah, we definitely. I don't think we would have seen this if it stayed the same. I think it's great for everybody involved, and I think it kind of gives uh, a little bit bigger glimmer of hope for every indie worker that's trying to get recognized. Because before management changed and all these affiliations came up, and like you said with AAA and even the TNA thing, I think that gives people a little bit more hope and opportunity because it's not just WWE and AEW, and TNA. Now it's like TNA is kind of working with WWE, so who knows what's going to happen. And that WWEID program, I know it's still very new.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time to be a worker, a wrestler, right now, because I think there's just a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different avenues, I should say, for people to get noticed. So I like the whole working together thing because I have a lot of friends in TNA that seem to be at the Performance Center a lot on Tuesday nights, and on pay-per-views together, PLEs, whatever we're calling them today. I think it's a good time. I just think there's a lot of opportunities right now. There's a lot of eyes on the independents right now, especially with that. I'm not blowing smoke. I have nothing to do with the WWID program or anything, but independent talent is being looked at more so than ever right now,
Yeah.
which I think is a great thing. I announced the WWEID championship match a few weeks ago with Cappuccino Jones and TJ Crawford. And I thought for sure they would just show the match. Even my intro is on the WWID Twitter feed and stuff like that. Like, that's some pretty cool shit right now.
Yeah.
And to see a lot of these guys and girls, a lot of them right here from this area or the Northeast in general, getting recognized. Ricky Smokes, Aaron Rourke, um, two good friends of mine that are in the program, Marcus Mathers. I just think it's a good time as long as you're in the right places, doing the right things with the right people. You're gonna be seen.
And you've
So
been piling on the accomplishments throughout your career, and they just keep coming. So, MLW, let's talk about it. That's your latest venture, although you've been there for quite a while now. Why don't you tell us how that's been? I mean, you've brought it to the next level as far as your ring announcing goes, and your exposure, and with the television and everything that goes along with it. MLW is even making action figures. Maybe we'll see a Rich Palladino action figure.
maybe wouldn't that be something? It's funny because we have tour T-shirts, and I always say to the merch guy, I'm like, how much longer do I have to be here before my picture may be in the corner? Could be
Right.
on like it's like the whole roster and stuff. Like I was there 2025 on the back. I'm going on 2 years since the first time that I was brought in. I want to publicly thank Antonio Thomas Santel, who was an agent at the time with MLW. They were looking for a ring announcer, and he said, "Oh, I know one of the best." And I got the call and did my first show in Philly, November 23. I was just the New York and Philly guy. I had inquired about, hey, you guys go in all these other cities. Oh, we're going to use local. We've got other people lined up, but thank you. And then all of a sudden, just about a year ago, hey, can you be in Atlanta? And I got to announce at center stage, which blew my mind. So I'm so happy and thrilled and proud to be a part of that. I've been trying to get in there for years,
Yeah.
and an opportunity came up, and I'm just doing everything I can to maintain it. So I have a little checklist, literally like right here, of every state that I've announced in, and MLW is helping me add some more states to that list. I love the locker room. I love the talent I'm working with. I love the people that I work for. Um, First class operation. Um, it's just amazing. Like I'll be in South Carolina later this month, and they just announced Matt Riddle against Killer Cross. I'm like, I get to announce that, and I'm getting to work with all these luchadors from CMLL. So I got to brush up on my Spanish. But the former Ricardo Rodriguez, Jesus Rodriguez, who runs Three Legacies Wrestling out in Pennsylvania, has been a friend, a coach, helps me get out of my head sometimes because I do get very nervous because that's the biggest scale thing I've done in years. So, yeah, I'm very fortunate to be a part of it. And one of my friends is a tag team champion now, Dijak and Bishop Dyer, the former Baron Corbin, are a tag team champion. So that's it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So we go to different cities, and I get to travel around a little bit with Dijak, and I got a lot of friends there now, and it's just it makes me very, very happy, and I'm just on cloud nine. I think my eyes are dancing right now.
And
So
how
yeah,
can fans follow you?
just Richard Palladino on Facebook because some idiot hacked my page a couple years ago. At Rich Palladino on Twitter, and Ringside Rich on Instagram. So yeah, love
And I
to
know you have
talk
the,
to.
the shirt as well, the T-shirt. Is there other merchandise coming, or at least in regards to the T-shirt? How can fans grab one?
I usually just sell them at shows, but if anybody's interested, I can ship them out and whatnot. And yeah, no, I just the T-shirt. I always have pictures if anybody's inclined. But the one thing I do is when I plug merchandise at shows, I never plug my own because I'm not doing what the athletes in the ring are. But I am always at the table. I'm not going to deny a T-shirt, but I do have a pretty cool T-shirt out there. And talking to a friend right now about getting some stickers, just to have something else to have on the table. But
Yeah.
yeah, never thought I'd see the day where I'm selling merch. But hey, I got to put these kids through college, man. I got twins.
Right. I guess. Right. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah, man.
goodness.
Yeah,
That's
it's been
awesome.
fun,
Well,
Joe.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you, and we got to have you back soon because I've got enough content to do a part 3 with you. So,
Uh-oh.
you know,
Yeah. No, it's been
but
good. I've enjoyed it. Good. In part 3, then I'll get my Mount Rushmore shit together. So
right, exactly right. So, thank you so much, Rich, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Fans, it's been the All Access Entertainment Podcast for Rich Palladino. I'm your host, Joseph Bruen, and we will certainly see you next time.